She did everything that you're told to do.
You know, if it wasn't Sarah, it could have been somebody else. We all walk home, it's something we all do.
What stops it from being me? What stops it from being anyone that I love?
What point are our lives more valuable than being told the only way you can stay alive is to stay in this little tiny bit of space and never leave it?
She was just walking home. It's a simple statement which became a battle cry for women last spring in the wake of Sarah Everard's kidnap and murder. Sarah came to represent the every woman. She could have been you, your sister, your best friend, or your colleague. She could have been someone you smile at on the morning coffee run, or brush shoulders with on the tube. A year since friends and family launched a desperate search for Sarah, the horror of last March is still resonating across the country. Today, MyLondon revisits the harrowing events that led to Sarah's death, and the conversations it sparked around male violence and women's safety. It was on Leithwaite Road in Clapham that Sarah Everard left her friend's flat at around 9:10 on the 3rd of March. Earlier that evening, she was captured on CCTV in Sainsbury's, buying a bottle of red wine to share with friends. After leaving her friend's house, Sarah began her walk along the South Circular Road across Clapham Common. A couple of minutes after her departure, she called her boyfriend. They arranged to meet up the next day, and he said she seemed in good spirits. The phone call ended at 9:28 p.m, and it was the last time anyone heard from Sarah. At 34 minutes past 9, multiple dash cams and footage from the 417 bus clearly captures Sarah and her killer standing outside his white hire car on Poinders Road. Cousins falsely arrested Sarah for breaching COVID guidelines, showing her his police warrant card and handcuffing her. Cousins is seen next on CCTV at 11:43 p.m, pulling away from North Military Road in Dover. In the early hours of March the 4th, Cousins is believed to have killed Everard. Hours later, he calmly pulled into a service station to buy apple juice, water, and a Lucozade orange. In the following hours, Cousins carefully attempted to cover up his horrific actions. He returned the rental car and filled up a can with petrol he would later use to burn her body that evening. But Cousins' sick attempts to cover his tracks would be in vain. On March the 9th, officers arrived at his home in Deal, proceeding to handcuff, arrest and interview him. The cowardly 48-year-old initially denied any knowledge of Everard before attempting to spin a web of lies about her disappearance. It didn't work. He was arrested and put into police custody. By now, the news of Sarah's disappearance and murder had become a global talking point. The story of a young woman abducted, assaulted and killed at the hands of a man employed by the police struck a chord with many.
But I think the biggest thing was the abuse of power that was at the heart of it. The police is not just any old public institution. It's there to protect and serve. Wayne Cousins misused his warrant card in order to trick Sarah Everard into getting into his car. And I think that shook people to the core.
As news of Sarah's rape and murder spread across London and beyond, women began talking about their own fears and experiences of harassment. Those who came to leave flowers for Sarah at Clapham Common's bandstand expressed anger, frustration and exasperation.
Sarah is all of us. You know, I mean, you don't need to intimately know someone to genuinely feel for what they went through.
Just so upsetting because you could feel it, you know, it could be any of us, any one of us. It's just, I've heard stories from like multiple friends who are women, you know, that can't even go out in the day without feeling like they're not fully safe. And
on the 13th of March, a vigil for Sarah was held on Clapham Common, organised by the newly formed activist group Reclaim These Streets.
So when Sarah's body was found, I figured I could make that space for women that needed what I needed. And I hadn't hugged my best friend, I hadn't hugged anybody. And so I needed to be around people that were as upset, as angry. And this idea that they were telling women the only way to keep ourselves alive was to stay locked in our houses It was already in a lockdown.
The Met tried to shut down the vigil, claiming it was illegal amid coronavirus restrictions at the time. They threatened the founders of Reclaim These Streets with fines of £10,000 if the vigil went ahead. The vigil was cancelled, but thousands turned out to pay their respects to the brilliant daughter, sister, friend and colleague who lost her life. But what began as a peaceful collection of mourners soon turned violent as police clashed with those in the crowd. Chants of "We will not be silenced" echoed across Clapham Common. As night fell, police began asking those leading the chants to leave the vigil, saying they were breaking COVID restrictions. Tensions then escalated rapidly. Police officers grabbed women, forcefully leading them away in handcuffs and later arresting 9 people. Patsy Stevenson became the figurehead of those arrested at Sarah's vigil while simply trying to pay their respects.
I drew strength from the number of women who had come together in solidarity. This should have been a safe space for us to freely express ourselves. I'm angry that the police shut down our space to mourn and comfort each other, and I feel violated that male officers use physical force to do so.
Public trust in the Metropolitan Police had already been shattered by the actions of Wayne Couzens, but the policing of the vigil led to even further condemnation. In July, a parliamentary inquiry found that the police response at the vigil had breached fundamental rights to public protest. But the Metropolitan Police have defended their actions, saying policing the event was a highly complex situation.
In terms of the policing plan that happened that weekend, as you know, we've had a review into our policing operation, and it was found that there was no specific recommendations in order to how we might do that differently in the future, and that happened very swiftly.
On the morning of June the 8th, Wayne Couzens pleaded guilty to the rape and kidnap of Sarah Everard. It was a month later when he admitted to her brutal murder. The sentencing hearing took place on the 30th of September 2021, lasting a day and a half. It revealed more harrowing details of what Couzens did to Sarah Everard on the night she went missing and the days afterwards.
The atmosphere in the court was like something I've never experienced, because obviously I was there as a reporter, but there was no way I couldn't sort of break cover, as it were, as just somebody who is a woman and somebody who lives in southwest London, and even sort of in that small courtroom where there's only a handful of people, you just really got a sense that the whole world was watching, because everyone did just have such a vested interest in this case.
Despite having to listen to the prosecution outline the events of Sarah's murder in such painful detail, her family remained strong and composed in the face of her killer.
The fact that Sarah Everard's family was able to share what they wanted to say and sort of share their rage, share their grief, and was able to do so with such sort of clarity and dignity was honestly remarkable, considering, like I said, all of the public gallery was just moved to tears. And something that really kind of stood out to me was when her mum said, you've robbed Sarah of her future and all those conversations that can't be had, and the life that can't be lived.
Sarah's sister Katie shared how she was haunted by her sister's final moments, asking, at what point did she realise she wasn't going to survive the night? In a heartbreaking end to her statement, Katie shared all the things she wanted to share with her sister, from trips abroad to being each other's bridesmaid and growing old together. She said, "The thought of not having Sarah forever is too hard to bear." On the 1st of October 2021, Sarah's killer was jailed for life and told he'd never be released from prison. In the year since Sarah Everard's murder, 125 women have been killed in the UK, leading to serious questions about whether enough is being done to tackle violence against women and girls in our society. This generation of women will never forget Sarah's name, and many are calling for systemic and deep-rooted change in her memory.